So after that, I wrote a poem for you guys. I'm going to set the expectation down here. Look, it's not great, but I promise you, by the end, your life will just be a little bit better. I stand on this stage because I believe in one thing. I believe now we can change everything. You've heard this before, it's not something new. Malala Yousafzai said it, and Steve Jobs too. But what's different today is that for me and you, the education we receive can actually teach us how to. We're part of this generation they call Gen Z. They describe us as fortunate, but mostly carefree. Carefree to the hell. Do they even know what we face? Okay, maybe not war, not fighting for peace, but certainly, now more than ever, fighting to find our place. Because the jobs of tomorrow are not like the jobs of today. They created technology that would take that away. But guys, that's great. That was the missing link. And now, finally, our minds are freed to really think. Think big, think wide, think beyond humanly possible. Because for the first time, that's actually plausible. Our jobs are going to be to make impossible possible. It's like when humans first stood on 2 feet, freeing our hands that were once obsolete. Now we can focus on the change we envision because today we can make that decision. So the jobs of tomorrow are not going to be like the jobs of today because we are going to make them that way. So I stand on this stage because I believe in one thing. I believe now we can change everything. And that change begins with this. Now that we know 2/3 of students today are going to be working in jobs that don't even exist yet, we need to be teaching for tomorrow instead of teaching for today. We, even you and I, are currently being prepared for jobs that probably will no longer exist. The factory model of education that we receive now is unfortunately still based on industrial principles from the last century to improve efficiency. All you have to do is look into our classrooms. Rows of desks, a factory line of students. So what they do, they made us sit in circles, but rows of circles and a factory line again. Unfortunately, the system of priming us to be workers in a labour economy has reached its expiry date. And as we dive into this exciting age of big data and tech, this next era of education certainly needs to keep up so that we walk away with an education that actually relates to the jobs of tomorrow, that we have future-proof skills, entrepreneurial skills that don't go out of date. In the past, we defined entrepreneurship as starting something new, a new business maybe, but I challenge us all to consider today that entrepreneurship is the mindset of constant problem solving. It's the capability to turn problem into opportunity. And the best part is that there is no age, race, or experience barrier to getting started. So there is no reason to not get started early. Now I say this because at 19, I launched my own startup to be able to teach high school students entrepreneurship. It's been a wildly successful program in high schools where I've literally seen students' thinking transform before my very eyes. On the first day, I tell them this: to be a good student, we work hard, we get all the right answers, we conform our mind to pass the test. To be a good entrepreneur, we work hard, we make a heap of mistakes, and we adapt our mind to be able to question why there was one right answer in the first place. By teaching my students to think like entrepreneurs, I'm shifting their mindset from focusing on achieving success to focusing on learning from failures. And they finally let go of this fear of failure once I do this one very simple exercise. I pull out my phone and I ask them, what apps on my home screen do you think are wildly successful? Twitter, they say. Brilliant. Well, Evan Williams, before he was co-founder of Twitter, he actually launched a podcasting platform called Odeo. Right after they launched, Apple launched podcasts and iTunes and took over the whole market. Odeo died. It was an epic failure, but an epic learning lesson that poured into his next project, Twitter. LinkedIn, they say. Even better, Reid Hoffman, before he was co-founder of LinkedIn, he launched an online dating platform called SocialNet. SocialNet, in its first month, had 5 signups. I don't even have 5 friends, but even I could do better than that. A complete failure, but a complete success in terms of getting Hoffman to realize that actually we need a matchmaking platform for professionals instead. And by the time we get through my whole phone, it's very strikingly clear that even these seemingly wildly successful ventures all have failure stories behind them. And it's when my students realize that actually failure is not a penalty. That's almost like something unlocks within them, and they're finally set free to dream big and to try anything and to make their own ideas happen. Because regardless of the outcome, they're always going to succeed in learning from that experience. So now, 16-year-old students in my program are practicing turning their ideas into reality. They're launching online communities that give minorities a voice. They're selling out homemade meals faster than their school canteen can even open for the day. All because the only failure that they can make is if they didn't try in the first place. And once I've unlocked this fail fast mentality in my students, then they can become infinite learners. Now, schools attempt to teach us just that learning is a lifelong journey, but only after you can figure out how to find X, of course. But being an infinite learner means more than just a lifelong journey. It means that you're also open to learning from anyone, anywhere. Now, I know that sounds like super counterintuitive, that to be the expert, you actually listen and value people with less experience and less knowledge than you. But I tell my students this, that if you walk into a room and you already think that you're the smartest person there, you've already proven that you're not. Because there's always something you can learn from others. Like last month, I was in Australia's first startup accelerator for migrant and refugee or social entrepreneurs. There was not a single founder who shared the same idea, who shared the same background, age, or even the same set of languages that I did. In fact, we were probably so diverse, we probably could have represented the UN. But I learned more about my own idea, my own startup, and the future of that from a few days of talking to them than a whole month of going at it alone and researching the heck out of the education space. Because the best entrepreneurs know this, to always talk to people, to speak to people, because there is a power in naivety. When people don't yet know what you know, they also don't yet know what can't exist and what barriers there are. They're a blank canvas that goes, well, what if? And when we are able to learn from everyone around us, that is when we have an infinite amount of resources to be able to learn for life. And it is this infinite learner trait that actually makes entrepreneurs so successful in business, because we take the time to listen to our customers, our competition, our collaborators. Even just last month, I had one of my students launch her pilot test of selling healthy snacks in her school locker room. And the first day, all the students came up to her and were like, "How much money did you make?" And her simple reply was, $30, but that actually didn't matter. All I wanted was your feedback and to see if it actually tasted good. Now, when the measure of success shifts from the dollar signs and the number of customers to the learning opportunities to be able to improve, that's when my students realize that they can grow into infinite learners. Now, being entrepreneurial, you have to always put yourself in other people, always look at problems in other people's perspective. That's just the basic principle of understanding your customer. Put yourself in their shoes. But it's also the mindset that we need to improve the education that already exists in classrooms today. Because the best way to get someone to learn something is to make them experience it from the other side. So I used to have students who came to class late every single lesson, but instead of marking off the roll and punishing them if they had 3 strikes, I would make them do a 30-minute group task where they had to arrange it and have to achieve something in that time. Now they're on the other side of the fence. Now they understand how valuable every minute is. And now they know how frustrating it is when someone turns up late for no reason. Now they've learnt themselves never to be late again. I used to have students who would walk in and complain that maths class was useless, that finding X would get them nowhere in life. But instead of telling them that, hey look, it would probably be beneficial for your future, I showed them that it was going to be essential, simply by doing one thing, trying to get them to balance a balance sheet. It was hard. Now they're on the other side of the fence, and they understand how mind-blowingly frustrating it is when things literally don't add up. Now they've learned for themselves that there are real-life implications for what they're learning in the classroom, and they go back to math class inspired to find X. I say being entrepreneurial is often like the last missing piece of the puzzle. It's that piece of the puzzle where you've already searched the whole house and you are certain that your brother has hidden it from you, but then you reach into your back pocket and it was there all along. Because the industrial model of education actually equips us exceptionally well with the knowledge that we need to solve future problems. It's just missing that last little piece of how are we going to solve them and why should we? Well, in this next era of education, why entrepreneurial thinking needs to exist in high schools is because young people are now more powerful than ever today, but also because young people can no longer afford to not take action. Right now, over 50% of the world's population is under 30. Never before have we had this much of the world's population as young people. Never before have we had a whole generation with the power of numbers to be able to actually change the world. If we want to make a huge difference, it makes efficient sense to engage the power of young people. But it's estimated we only have, at best, a 23-year window to do something with that power before the impacts of an increasingly aging population set in and we get outnumbered by the 60 and overs. So it's in everyone's best interest to be educating majority of the population to be solving problems we're all going to face. But whilst young people have more power than ever today, we are also disproportionately impacted by all of the world's challenges. 40% of the world's unemployed, young people. 45% of the world's homeless, young people. Almost 50% of the world currently living in extreme poverty today are young people. If we aren't developing the solutions for our generation, then who is? We live in this hyper-connected world where at the touch of a button we can be streamed to a brother nation. But young people are more emotionally disconnected than ever. We live in a world of abundance, where we literally have enough food to feed every single mouth on this planet, yet 1 in every 2 children still goes to bed hungry at night. We live in a technological age where we have literally figured out how to turn sewage, I'm talking like feces, into drinking water, yet 1 in every 5 children in the world still doesn't have access to clean water. Now, if we aren't developing the solutions to our problems for our generation, then who is? We need visionaries, leaders, and change makers to solve the global challenges we're going to face in the next 23 years. We need to teach and grow young minds to question that surely there's got to be a better way, surely there is a solution, and when other people question, well, what if it doesn't work? Instead, we've got to hear, well, what if it does? Because entrepreneurship is not about creating companies. Entrepreneurship is about creating change. And so in this next era of education, we need to instill this mindset of problem solving Because, to be quite honest, it's not very hard to identify a problem in this world. I mean, just go try and connect to the Monash Wi-Fi. We've all been there. But to really deep dive and understand why that problem exists, why do half of the children under 5 in this world still go to bed hungry at night? And to solve that root cause of the problem is actually really freaking hard. Well, because they don't have access to food. Well, why don't they have access to food? Because the crops don't grow when it doesn't rain. But instead of having these band-aid solutions that merely scratch the surface of the problem, well, here's a food handout for the day that we fundraised for. We're going to have systemic solutions that change the way we live across the world. No, here is a genetically modified crop that doesn't need rain to grow. That is the opportunity that awaits our generation. Our future of work and our jobs are going to be to identify those problems that need to be solved, to create opportunities that don't even exist yet, and to redesign the way that we work at mass scale. And the best part is, it's already happening in the world around us. Because when I say solving the problem of middle-class inequality, what comes to mind? Probably not Airbnb, but that's exactly why it can exist today. See, 10 years ago, in 2008, the global financial crisis hit Americans hard, especially the middle class, who many of whom got laid off. The only reason that Airbnb was one of the very few ventures that could take off after the global financial crisis and actually had homeowners allow strangers to come and sleep in their homes was because middle-class homeowners needed that income after they got laid off. It's a real problem. It's an obvious problem now. Airbnb is the shared economy solution for those hard done by the global financial crisis. But it's well disguised to us as a solution to our travel and accommodation problems. So it's possible, it's very possible, to solve some of the toughest challenges we're going to face with entrepreneurial thinking. Young people are more important and have more power than ever, but we need to be better prepared to think more entrepreneurially to change the way we accept the world. The jobs of tomorrow are not like the jobs of today, but we should be excited that the future is going that way. There is so much to learn and much more to yearn. Let's start by teaching Gen Z to understand that we're the leaders with a big task at hand. To create a future where problems are solved, ideas are nurtured, and everyone's involved. Starting from nothing is already miles ahead of not starting at all and waiting to be led. But let's talk about those 2/3 of jobs that don't exist yet, because you and I are going to be in them, don't forget. Today's programmers, tomorrow's hologrammers. The world now, more than ever, is only limited by our imagination, because young people have the absolute power of creation. So dream of the world that you want to be in, because today we can make that change begin. So I stand on the stage because I believe in one thing. I believe now we can change everything. Thank you.